The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Finance Committee and Select Board combined meeting on March 4th, 2021. We'll be kicking off the budget hearing sessions as of today. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
And I'll lead it. No, thank you. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the
republic
which it stands,
one
nation,
God, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
all.
Okay, so we'll do open forum and then opening remarks from Town Manager Jody. Does anybody have any questions or any topics for open forum that is not related to the posted agenda? Yeah.
All right, can I just interrupt? I think we need to make our announcement that the meeting is being recorded for folks in case, I don't know if we have an audience or not, but the meeting is being recorded, and that all questions or comments that are received are made part of the public record. Keep us honest.
Okay. I will start doing that going forward. I just don't I got used to it yet. Okay. Also,
Nahara,
yeah.
you may want to ask, let people know if they want to ask a question, if you'd like them to put it in the chat. We find that to be pretty helpful because it's often hard to see people's hands.
Okay.
And so whoever the co-hosts are can watch for hands too, but if people put it in chat, that's a great way to make sure we see it.
For the audience, this meeting is being recorded and also as a public record. So your questions and answers will be posted on Westford website. If you have any questions during the meeting, you can raise your hand, or also you can type them in the webinar chat. Webinar chat helps for us to track them and respond them better. So having said that, I did not see our responses any for the open forum.
I do.
Okay. Heather?
I was just going to say that some of us have been going to the school's subcommittee finance meetings, and they're going to meet tomorrow actually in the morning and try and answer a lot of our questions, and also maybe put together a snapshot of where they are for FY21. So it'll be something we can look forward to in the future, soon, near future.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Jody.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to go, actually, if you scroll up to the top, just to start there, Dan, please. This is the budget message that I delivered to all of you in the school committee on February 9th. And we have some updated information. I've updated the document, which is also on the website. But if you'll scroll down, Dan, I just wanted to clarify something. I think it's been a little confusing for many of us. But so the overall Chapter 70 funding increased by $137,580 in the governor's budget. And so this was allocated in the newly implemented Student Opportunity Act. So this is different than how it's done in the past. So in what we presented, we had that in state aid, but we didn't have it targeted towards the school budget. We have learned that has to be targeted to the school budget. So basically, if you scroll down, Dan, I just wanted to update the figures so everybody was crystal clear. When I first presented this, we said we had 159,000 in surplus, but in fact, with that 137,000 going to the school budget, we only have 21,850 in surplus, and that leaves the schools with 995,508, or a 1.63% increase for 22. So I know this figure has been thrown around at different meetings, and it was very confusing for all of us, but We checked the laws today and the cherry sheet and several other documents, and this is the correct information. So I just wanted to let you all know and answer any questions.
Harry?
Yeah, 1 minute. Okay. Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, so do you have the part, Jody, then that or the slide, or Dan, that shows then the percentage of funds allocated to town departments versus schools with these changed figures? Thank you.
So let's scroll down. We have more documents to update tomorrow. But Dan, do we have the one with the percentage?
Yeah.
I can pull it up quickly. I was updating budgets before the meeting, so if you give me 1 second, I can find that slide.
All this will be online tomorrow, but we had a joint chairs meeting with Bill Olson and the joint chairs for the FinCom school committee and select board today, and we really needed to get down and understand this and correct the documents. That's why I'm bringing it to your attention tonight. And
So that
everything
would be
will be
79%, by the way, of that number.
Oh, well,
78. There you go.
you and Dan have to duke that out, but
I'll give him a point.
I'm going to leave these documents as updated because I don't want to confuse people. I'm not going to accept the changes. We'll just leave it as updated as we move forward.
Yeah, just
So
one
that's
last thing. So those two have to add to 100. So I think it's 79 and 21 basically.
We still have 2% left over in this 21,000 here. So once that's allocated, that'll be 100%, Mark.
Thank you.
Or one for Dan.
Damn it.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for allowing me to just clarify. I just want to be sure we're, all talking about the same numbers here. So thank you.
Any more questions from anybody regarding that topic? Okay, we'll close that. Let's move to 705 agenda, review of financial year 2022 department budgets. The first up is under the general government, Board of Assessors.
We do have Paul Plouffe joining us.
Good evening.
Hey, welcome, Paul. And so I believe at this point, all the data has been provided. Everybody has looked at it. Questions and answers have been responded. Let's see if anybody from Finance Committee have any questions. Christina?
Yeah, I had asked if Paul could just sort of give a brief overview of the tax levy, how it works, how commercial properties are assessed for kind of the general public.
Well, the tax levy is generated partly through the budget. After all those sources of income, the remaining balance would be the tax levy. Commercial properties are based primarily on income and expenses. So for fiscal 21, the income and expenses for calendar year 2019 is what is reviewed, and this is how we based our values by income approach. Of course, we have lots of office condos in town, so the income approach does not follow with those types of commercial properties. It would be based on market sales, if any, or in the lack of sales, then you're kind of looking at regionally as to what's going on.
So this might have been asked already, but Paul, can you give us how the situation has changed since the COVID has led many of the foot traffic businesses down?
For fiscal 21, we don't have that information. Again, our values are based on calendar year 2019, which was obviously before COVID hit. Of the abatements that we received this year, only 2 commercial properties are arguing whether or not that COVID is a reason that they should get an abatement. Both of those are going to be denied by the Board of Assessors. Moving forward to FY22, there may be some significant information as to whether or not it will impact commercial sales or commercial values rather for FY22. Right now, it really is a big unknown. We do have one major property that has filed, again, based on COVID, presumably based on the fact that the governor had, to some degree, declared it a state emergency. And so they're interpreting the law a little bit to what suits them. Department of Revenue has argued a different point in terms of FY21. So FY22, I think, will be the year that some of these things are played out. Any denials this year on the commercial properties that are claiming COVID, I mean, these would certainly file ATV. At least one of those appellants will, and let it tell a tax board make that decision. As of now, I think most cities and towns are not buying COVID as a reason. I mean, when this started, we were actually into the late part of the third quarter, fourth quarter of fiscal 2020. So again, looking at information that really is a year old to determine a more current value for the fiscal year, it kind of changes the dynamics.
Dennis and Heather.
Hi, Paul. I reviewed the report. I just wanted to ask you, get a comment. You talked about a little bit of a problem with the uncollected balance that seemed to straighten itself out again. So I guess the questions I have for you, do you see this as a fluctuating trend or a one-time deal? And also the deferrals and the abatements and the basically the failure to pay, are they cause you any sort of a problem, or do you anticipate a problem in the future?
I can't really answer that question. The tax collector will probably be best to determine or estimate what might happen down the road. In terms of exemptions and that we currently have in here, the numbers aren't really changing. I think we're adding 2 more to tax deferrals this year, and we've seen a few more elderly exemptions. I think 2 or 3, I think 2 more veteran exemptions, people having moved into town. In terms of the abatements, honestly, we have 41 or 42 abatements this year. Never in 20 years have I ever seen anything that low. The lowest year for abatements was probably about 2-3 years ago. We had about 70-75 of them. So at this point, some of those have been denied. Some of those have been, granted, and there'll be some discussion on some of those. So hopefully after next week, Board of Assessors, all that business will be done. Like I say, moving forward, I think in terms of abatements and exemptions, you're not going to see much changes with the exemptions, other than maybe a couple of new deferrals. But what happens after July 1, I couldn't even venture a guess. And whether there'll be more collectibles, I would have to venture a guess. If there's going to be on collectibles, it would probably be more with personal property, because those are businesses. And so, we have seen some businesses already. Some of the abatements I have processed were based on businesses that have closed during calendar year 2020 because of COVID.
Thank you.
Heather?
I was wondering, Paul, if you could talk a little bit about how the commercial properties work, as far as if they're vacant or if they're full, and how that affects, I guess, where the burden shifts to, and also if Puma has left yet, if we've seen the effects of that, or is that in the coming year?
I don't know. Puma owns the building. I was able to find, again, I'm not sure if it's still on the market, but last I saw it was on the market for sale or lease. I think the fact that they own the building at this point in time, there's been no issue with the value. Whether that will be next year, I don't know. In terms of commercial properties, large commercial properties are generally valued by the income approach. This is why we look at income and expenses. And again, for FY21, it was based on calendar year 2019. These smaller commercial properties, the office condos that we have a lot of on Littleton Road, we tend to look at market sales in those instances and to see kind of where we're going. In some of the buildings with the office condos, there have been some buildings that have had higher vacancies with their office condos than some of the other buildings. And those are more older, dated buildings that have a higher vacancy within those buildings. And the sale prices of those units are also have been significantly lower than some of the better buildings.
Can you just elaborate on the Puma, for example? You said we base it on, their income and expenses, but if they're not there and they own the building, we'll have a drop, right, at some point?
Possible. At this point, I mean, we don't get income and expense information from Puma because it is an it's an owner-occupied building. So we do have, a few commercial properties along 110 that are in fact owner-occupied. So there is no income and expenses that they're going to give us just because of that fact. But again, when we look at all the others, it helps us to kind of derive where some of these building values should be. I didn't check, but I believe Puma for FY21, I think it's assessed somewhere around the $10 million mark. And they haven't questioned it and they haven't filed an abatement. So I'm going on the premise that we're still good.
Okay, hopefully they're not listening.
Yeah.
So then I had two actually other things. I was looking through some old papers and I saw that we were doing the market analysis in 21. Did that get changed because of COVID and now it's in the 22 budget?
No, I don't think I quite understand what you're asking.
The contracted services, when they go out and they assess everybody or a portion of the town, did that get moved because of COVID?
No, no. The issue with any contracts that we do, I mean, we straddle between calendar year and fiscal year. So like for FY21, we actually started the reval in fiscal year 2020 by the third, fourth quarter. And then of course, by September of fiscal 21, we were wrapping business up with our contractor, and Department of Revenue is getting all our forms submitted, getting the value submitted. And then, so for us, we start the process in December. If I have an outside contractor, generally I need them to wrap business up, hopefully by the middle of September, so I can start my submissions by the end of September, early October at the latest.
Okay. And then my last question is, I was just wondering if you could send us like the overlay account history just to see the balance at the end of each fiscal year. And then I know we used some a couple of years ago to close the budget loophole, and then the inflows. And I know we just are using another, I forget, 40, 20 something. Just a roll forward of that account.
A lot depends on what's happening because the exemptions come out of there. Those are relatively stable. Abatements tends to be the one thing that we can't calculate. I mean, whether we have lots of abatements or few abatements, but a lot of big dollars that are being given back, it depends from year to year. In some fiscal years, we actually have had a deficit because of things that occurred. And if it's an HEB case that goes in a particular fiscal year and we're settling out, or they win a case 2 years later, it'll hit the fiscal years of the original abatement. And depending on what's happening, we could run into a deficit. It's happened, I think, 2 or 3 times. But for the most part, we do carry a balance. Some years a little smaller, other years a little more. Moving forward, I think when we were looking at FY22 and FY21 moving forward, we're anticipating some of the changes with the exemptions, the local option exemptions, and not knowing where that's going to actually filter out. And as well as using the excess overlay to fund any contractual services that would be needed, because those costs have gone up. In my office, I tried to make do with a $15,000 budget for the last 20 years, and that just simply doesn't work anymore. So what I'm working on now is hopefully we can get a 3-year contract to level off, preparing for the next reval, which should be in 5 years from now in fiscal year 26. So I think the goal right now is to budget from the excess overlay to kind of fund that. Because in the past, if you recall, when we've had a reval year every 3 years, we would see that little spike. But now that little spike has become a much bigger spike. Personal property is now mandated that we do a full review every 5 years. And so that means boots on the ground. I don't have the manpower in the office to do that. And then, of course, keeping up with cyclical inspections and costs have gone up. And then, of course, now beginning FY21, we also have to do appraisals for our personal properties, the 504s, which is like National Grid, Colonial Gas, and the Department of Revenue is now requiring those. So that's also built into the FY21. That was built into the cost for that reval. And it's also budgeted in for the next 3 years that has to be done annually. In those cases that we thought would agreed upon with those companies in the Department of Revenue are all being challenged.
So anyone have any questions from Finance Committee? Okay. Andrea, you want to do the select board?
Sure. Does anybody from select board have any questions? I don't see any, so we're good, Hari.
Okay. If you want, I can just do both of them together. That's okay too.
Yeah, I feel free to do that. Okay.
Okay. So one question I have is assessors and tax collectors the same thing right now, or do we have to ask tax collector questions separately? Because somewhere along the line, when Heather asked a question, he said, okay, that's more like a tax collector question.
Yeah, if in regards to any collections, she'd be best person to probably answer that, and as to what she might be seeing moving forward.
Okay. So Jody?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what meeting we were at. It might have been Capitol, but Christine must ask that just recently, and she said that she did not see an increase in people not paying their taxes. There was just a slight delay, so I can answer that for you.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions about the tax collections? Okay. So we can wrap up Board of Assessors unless somebody have any other last minute questions or comments. Otherwise, we'll move on to Human Resources. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
So we'll moving on to the budget review of Human Resources Department 152. And Sam Hicks. Thank you. Okay, so just like usual, we have all the budget information posted to FinCom and the questions have been sent. I see some responses back. Anybody have any? Yep, John, 1 minute.
Yes, I have a question concerning the human resources, the professional development item. We got thank you, Jody, and everyone for providing the information. As I understand it, that now includes $6,465 for the deputy chief's education, get his master's degree, and added to the $4,400 that was put through in last year's budget. That's $10,000 plus. And you said the total cost was $20,000. When and from what sources was that $10,000 appropriated? It seems to have flown through under the radar screen.
Jody?
My recollection is you asked about this last year, John, and I believe we did a transfer from the police department expenses into, or vice versa, to cover the costs last year. And I remember you did question it, but it did pass at town meeting, so.
Well, it wasn't just, excuse me, Jody, that wasn't what I was talking about. You said that, I thought that this 6,000 was going to be the second increment, and then we had another $10,000 to go. And your reply stated that this was the last increment, and the total was going to be 20,000. So somewhere there's a $10,000 appropriation or spending in the budget somewhere that provided an additional $10,000.
I'm sorry, we don't hide anything in the budget. So Dan, can you please identify where that was funded from?
Yeah, that may take me a few minutes, but if my recollection is correct, it was funded through some money from the police expense budget and also some from the human resources budget, Pam. Is that your recollection?
It is, yes.
We generally fund tuition reimbursement from human resources, but at prior town meeting, I believe it was the spring town meeting or the summer town meeting, we transferred funds from police into this line item to help cover that cost because we had excess funds. And that was approved by town meeting unless it was a budget transfer we did through select board and FinCom in the spring. Do you remember that, Dan?
Yeah, I believe that was a vote of the FinCom and select board in May of last year that we did a transfer from police personal services to police expenses.
Right, that's when it was done.
Well, that was the 4,000, but I was looking for the 10,000 that's between, there seems to be $10,000 that has been funded that is not, at least according to what I've seen, been accounted for. I don't know where that came from. Because you said this is the last of the installments, it's $6,000 and the total is 20,000. And the transfer last year was 4,400 from the operations budget into the expense. It's going to be a transfer, but it morphed into part of the budget. And to me, I was just questioning if there was $20,000, where the other 10,000 was, or when it was appropriated, or we have more to, do we have more to come to meet that $20,000? Okay, well, that's.
We certainly can answer that question, John. I don't have that at my fingertips, but I can assure you that everything has been transparent and it's either been through the HR education or through the police. And I don't remember the exact figures. I'd have to dig that up, but.
My point is it should be transparent and visible. And I only picked this up last year when we were doing that transfer from the fiscal year 20 budget. And so that was the question.
I'm happy to get back to you on that.
Okay. Because I think somebody's going to question the fact that, I understand the need for it. But somebody's going to ask the question of why it wasn't more visible in the beginning, what funds it came from. This is a step, I think, putting it into the human resources budget is a step in the right direction.
It has always been covered in the human resources budget. All education for our employees has been covered in the human resources budget. To the best of my knowledge, the only time we ever did something different was when we transferred from police to cover that last spring. So this is where that money comes from.
Okay.
And we've covered this for many employees through the years. And there's 2 other employees we're covering it for now, but I'm happy to dig up the history and provide that to you tomorrow.
Okay. Just one other question. Is this, I understand last time that this has happened before. This is not the first time that we've provided this kind of support for the education of the police chief. I think it was mentioned last year that it's been done before. Is this kind of a policy that we have now that this is something we're going to do in the future for our police chiefs?
No, I don't know if the prior police chief had his master's before he was promoted. So I don't know anything about that. That was before I was hired.
Okay.
The deputy had a bachelor's degree, and I felt it was critical for him to earn a master's degree with all the challenges of that department. So I asked him to do that. And because I was requiring it, I felt it was important for the town to pay for something that I was requiring. I did ask Joe Targ, our fire chief, to get his degree, which the town did pay for, to complete it. He had partial. We paid for Dan O'Donnell's degree several years ago, and that was discussed at a FinCom meeting. And so this is not unusual. It is a benefit that the town provides for its employees if the degree will benefit their jobs, and we make them sign an agreement to either stay a certain number of years or pay it back incrementally. But it doesn't happen. I mean, we might have 1 or 2 people a year, or I think this year we have 3, but I mean, I think it's a benefit that helps us invest in our people. And I value education, so I think it's important.
Okay, well, I value it too. Thank you.
Okay. If you conclude the discussion, I want to go to Mark.
Yes, thank you. No, I just wanted to add in. I think we just need to be really careful. There's been a tremendous amount of transparency for a long, long time in the budget discussions. To the extent that any of us have questions, we just need to make sure those questions are asked and not kind of insinuate that there's some kind of hiding going on or anything else. So I just would caution us to be really careful about how we're asking these questions and where they are. If it were to ever happen that an answer couldn't be provided that was transparent, that would be one thing. But I've certainly never seen that in 13 years of that happening. So I just caution us to let's just be appropriate when we're asking.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I wasn't insinuating anything. I just wanted to know we missed the boat, or we didn't see that through the budget process. And I just wanted to, it was curious because I thought we were only on the second increment and it was going to be another year or 2 before that happened, but
understand.
Okay.
My understanding with Mark is he will complete this if we give him enough time to go to his classes at night and so on by December of next year. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Any other questions from FinCom about HR?
One.
Dennis?
Yep. I guess this question is for either Pam or Jody. I noticed that in the report or the budget report, the practice, or appears to me the policy, is that the managers were getting somewhere in the order of a 2% across the board raise. And I just noticed that in the case of the town accountant, it was a more like a 6.5% raise, 6.6% raise. And I was wondering if somebody could just explain what the exception was on that particular case.
My recollection, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we were paying the CPA stipend separately as a stipend. And I believe we moved that into his base instead of as a stipend. So it isn't a 6% raise. It's just, adjusting the way that's being paid to him. Am I right, Dan, on that one?
Yeah, that was done in January of this year.
But that's what we did. We moved his CPA stipend into his base.
Okay, thank you.
And when we did that, by the way, we did look at what other town accountants were being paid, and he is right square in the middle of where he should be for his experience and so on. So we don't just throw a dart. We definitely research that.
Good.
Yeah. Any questions from Select Board regarding human resources? Oh, Christina. I didn't see you before.
That's okay. Thanks. Sorry. I wanted to know if either Jody or Pam could talk about the town health insurance and just kind of give a little bit of what direction we're going in as far as trying to control that cost in some way, shape, or form, if that's even possible.
You want me to jump in, Pam, or would you like to? Okay, so interesting that you asked that, Christina. Of course, the health insurance is one of our largest budgets in the town side, or the largest budget. But we actually are in the process of interviewing brokers right now. We had hired someone a couple years ago, then her company got bought by another company and we weren't completely happy with their services. So we are in the process of narrowing that down between the brokers. We're really looking for a broker who can work with us through the year to figure out ways to control our costs. And we haven't been real successful with that in the last 2 or 3 years. We used to jump insurance a lot just to save a couple $100,000 each year. That ended poorly with Fallon a couple years ago. So we went back to Blue Cross, but I think it was for a 0 that year. So I'm working very, very hard on this. As I think you know, I am the negotiating person for all the school and the town for health insurance. And I think we're really committed to keeping this under control. So hopefully we'll have some exciting ideas for the upcoming renewal. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Do you think that are plan design changes at all in your thoughts or on your horizon?
You know, I don't know. I mean, this year our renewal was pretty good. We've done plan design changes, I think 3 or 4 times since I've been here, but some of these firms had some really interesting ideas, group purchase plans, programs, whatever they call them. One said he's kept his town's level with no change in service for the past few years. We're reading about how that's happened. So we'll evaluate everything, you know, and we've got a very active insurance advisory committee and PEC, the collective bargaining committee, that we all work together. But we are committed to keeping a quality benefit for our employees and retirees, but controlling costs.
Okay, thank you.
Heather? You're on mute.
Since we're talking about insurance, I was wondering if there was any plan to ever use a portion of the reserve. And I'm also wondering, are there any guidelines set by maybe select board for the upper and lower policy limits on what we would have in reserve?
At this point, they have not set a policy on that. We created the health insurance reserve account a few years ago. I think we were looking at a 13% increase, and, you know, of course, we were taking steps to control that. But anytime that the boards feel is appropriate, we certainly can ask town meeting to take money out of health insurance stabilization and put it towards insurance. I think we've tried to save it for a rainy day. I don't know if the rainy day is here yet or not, but you know, that was the purpose. So
in my opinion, I think it would be helpful if perhaps the select board at least established similar to the way we keep X% of free cash or reserves. It would be nice to have a policy that we can look to on how much we should kind of keep out there.
We can certainly take a look at that, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions from FinCom? Okay. So select board, any questions for human resources? Okay. So that wraps 152 human resources.
thank you, Pam.
Okay.
Hi, Pam. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. So we'll move to technology. Wells. Hey, Mike.
Hello.
Okay. So as usual, we have seen all the information from technology. And does anybody from FinCom have any questions for Mike? Okay. Dennis.
Hi, Mike, how are you?
All right, thanks, Dennis.
Listen, Mike, I just wanted to ask you a follow-up. I think last year I asked you to explain a little bit on the threats. And I noticed that it seems like there's an additional money in here, about $20,000 for upgrades. I'm just trying to get an idea of, I mean, what kind of threats are we talking about here? Are we talking about individual hackers? I mean, what's your concern? Just not that I have any objection to it. I'm just interested as to what sort of threats you think you're going to be dealing with, and why you need the money. That's all.
So there's good evidence overall that in the last few years there's been a shift towards trying to extort money from municipal governments, from school districts and things like that. A lot of the large corporations are harder to break into now because they've spent a lot of time and money on, preparing for these things. But we have a lot of valuable information. Budgets are always tight, always carefully managed in municipalities. So, and school districts even more so often, that it's not, we are an easier target, I think, as far as hackers are concerned now than a lot of businesses are. In terms of the kinds of attacks we're up against, I think I'm right in saying that about 90% of all successful hacks start by a piece of social engineering. Essentially, you send an email to somebody to trick them into doing something that they shouldn't do, which then allows the hackers to bypass the security processes. There's very little, the sort of hacking you see in Hollywood where they go out the firewall and they break into the firewall. That doesn't happen. That's not how it works. They do it by persuading someone to go to a website and type in their password, and then they log in as that person and have at it. So, no amount of technical security is going to help us with that. So we're focusing on a layered approach to it. Yes, we have the boundary security, we have firewalls, we have a heavily configured VPN system that restricts what you can do from outside. But we also do a lot of user training on how to detect phishing emails, spam emails. In fact, we just ran a phishing test today. Those of you who got a strange email today in your town email, that was what it was. And then we also assume that we will be broken into eventually. So one of the things that's gone up in the budget is we've improved the service we take from our antivirus vendor, where we're adding additional services to that, so that if a workstation gets infected, the antivirus software will shut it down before it has a chance to do anything too damaging in the network. The servers already have that same protection built in, and the current focus is on what they call zero-day threats, identifying malicious behavior. The rate of change of these things is so rapid now that you can't rely on fingerprint files to recognize known bits of hacking software. So what you have to do is look for strange behavior. Why is this machine suddenly going after all these, opening and closing all these files that this user doesn't typically go and open and close? And then, why is it doing a network connection to this peculiar internet address to go get something? That's the kind of thing we're looking at. And then, of course, the third layer is, if we do get breached and those measures fail, can we get our data back again when we're finished? We're looking at a two-stranded approach to doing backups. We have our conventional backup systems, and we also have some sort of offline backup systems as well. But it would be very hard for, well, you know what, I'm not sure I want to talk about that.
Well, that's fine. I think you have your hands full, Mike. I can see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, my audio dropped off in between and it came back. So, anyone else have any questions from FinCom? Levi?
Yeah, hi, Mike.
Hi.
My understanding, the IT department is not in the best condition, building in the town. So I'm curious, I'd like to get some update from you, in the past year, anything happened, what's your thought on the condition, give us, some high level description.
We haven't actually been in the building very much in the last year, which so I've been sitting in my kitchen making cups of tea, but the building it's had a fairly good year in comparison to the last few it's had, touch wood. We still have some persistent problems with it, and I would, there was I think some money that had been identified to do some mitigation efforts since the original plan to put the new town centre building seemed to be moving away from us as fast as we were moving towards it. So we decided to try and mitigate some of those security issues for that building. But it's been okay. It's not been a terrible year. We haven't had any roof leaks or burst pipes or anything like that.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Heather, why don't you go ahead after me? After I will go. Heather.
Thanks. So since Leeway brought it up, one of the questions that I put on a couple different departments was building maintenance. And they're all responsible in their different groups. But now that Paul Fox is on board, I wonder if it makes sense to pull all those maintenance items into one department, I think 190, whatever. Just because Paul's the expert on some of that kind of stuff. And it seemed like it might be a logical way to use somebody. I mean, it seems, to put Mike on the spot, I mean, it seems like he's got so much other stuff going on. If the roof starts leaking, I'm sure he does call Paul, but it just seems like it's something that Paul should own.
Well, I mean, given that we hold all the central money for all the IT computers and things, it would be a bit hypocritical to say I want to keep my own budget for my building. I'm very happy if that was to be funded somewhere centrally, then that would be fine with me. I have no. Looks like Jody wants to disagree with me.
Okay, Jody, go ahead.
No, I do not want to disagree with you, Mike, but I wanted to tell Heather, I do agree with you, Heather. I think we had intended to do that this year, but honestly, with COVID and all the other challenges and the budget and all the fiscal challenges, we just didn't have time to do all of that and realign maintenance. But I would say that is something we will do for 23. So I agree with you. And can I just tell a little tiny tale here? In the pandemic, I just want you to know how helpful Mike is. When the pandemic began last year and we could not find toilet paper anywhere, Mike actually found some, and he actually split his 6-pack of TP with me and gave me 3 rolls. So that just shows you, what a great guy he is. And,
I wasn't expecting that story to come back.
That's never happened in my career before, but we shared I think it might have been an 8-pack, and he gave me 4 and kept 4 for himself. But that was, just shows you what kind of a guy he is.
No, great love.
Luckily, it's not, now I'm a hoarder of toilet paper if anybody needs any, so.
Mark?
Yeah, I just want to make a point. I'm not sure that's all that bold. If he was really chivalrous, he would have given you more than 50%. The fact that he only gave you 50%, really, I'm a little disappointed.
There are 3 people in my household, so.
Priority.
Tom?
I've got something that's not toilet paper related. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I wanted to just have an appreciation for Mike and also for Paul Fox for all the work that they're doing outside of their normal flow of work for the Town School Safety Task Force. Lots of work, lots of programs to manage, all done without any additional funding or support, and just much appreciated. And I know it's been a lot of extra hours. So thank you for all your hard work, Mike.
You're welcome.
And could I just add that Paul's department is down 1.5 FTEs. I do have money in the budget for the half FTE, and I believe Bill has money for that too, but he is working shorter staffed. The other thing is I believe he's at the hospital having a baby right as we are meeting. So we'll wish him good luck.
Paul's having a baby?
He's a baby.
His wife is having a baby.
Oh, thank you for the clarification.
Good for him.
Okay, so John and Heather.
I just wanted to ask Mike what the condition of his facility is.
Oh, well, as
He just told Leeway.
Yeah, it's not getting any better. We're not spending any money on it, but it's we're not we're only occupying the building sort of 1 or 2 people at a time right now. I've essentially split my department into 2 teams, and we take it in turns to man the building. So the 2 groups never actually meet each other. But it's, you know, it's not a great building. It's not very warm in the winter, and it's pretty hot in the summer. But it's still working for us at the moment.
Okay. I'm just concerned about the potential for moving some of these projects forward because of funding and things like that, and the impact it might have on you. And I think it's important that we get you out of there into something that's much better.
Well, I appreciate that. I agree. I think particularly from the sort of security perspective, if you look at the recommendations for how you know, thinking of security in slightly broader terms than the initial question about attacks and sort of attacks on our systems, the security of the actual systems in the buildings is just as important as those things. And that building really is a long way from ideal in those respects.
Okay. Heather, you have a question?
I'm actually jumping the gun a little bit. Something Jody said caught my interest. You said Paul Fox is down 1.5 employees. So are there 2.5 employees in that department? For some reason, I always thought it was Paul and an assistant. I didn't realize it was bigger than that.
So when Paul was hired, we created Paul's position and an office manager, Jackie, who works for him. Richie Crocker was the facility director, who performed more kind of with the custodial staff and maintenance, supervising them. He retired last June, so that position is open. And Bill Kennison, who's half-time facilities and half-time engineering, also retired last June. So neither of those positions are filled. I think I talked to Bill about making it one position to assist Paul with all the buildings throughout town and all the projects. But so far we have not hired for that position, but I do have 40,000 in this year's budget that I have not spent. And I also have 40,000 in the 22 budget earmarked for that. I don't know if you know, Heather, but when we formed the Town and School Safety Task Force, we came up with about $1 million worth of capital repairs to the schools mostly and some town buildings, and Paul handled that pretty much on his own. It's not quite complete. And then when we got into the pandemic and we needed PPE, because he gets things done, we made him in charge of PPE for the whole town. So he had to start buying all that and storing it and so on. So I do think he's stretched thin, and some of the projects are getting delayed a little bit. So it is something I think we need to look at. I mean, it's a big department. Look at all the schools we have and all the town buildings, and you want maintenance, which I agree with you, under him too, for every town building. That's a lot for one guy with an admin and, you know, maintenance, a couple of craftsmen and custodians.
I agree. For some reason, I thought those other guys were fully paid by the school or somewhere else.
No, Bill Kennison was entirely on the town, but I did tell Bill I would share the funding for a full-time backup. You know, he asked if I would share it 50-50. I honestly don't care. I just think that person is needed. I don't want to burn Paul out, and you know, there's projects that people are waiting for. So,
John.
Yeah, Jody, the Public Works Initiative recommended that we combine the facilities efforts for both schools and towns, since all the facilities are town facilities in essence. And do you see any progress toward achieving that in any time soon or in the near future?
well, we did combine facilities. Town and school is combined. It is not under Public Works. It is separate, but we did do that when we created that a couple of years ago and hired Paul.
Okay, it just seems like they're still a little bit separate. My mistake, sorry.
No, they're not under Public Works. And honestly, Steve Cronin has a lot on his plate, and he has achieved significant savings since we created the DPW. But we haven't been able to find a water superintendent. Unfortunately, we've tried to hire 3. None have accepted due to the salary being too low. And so he's actually running the water department entirely by himself. He is also running highway and of course other departments. And Chip Barrett just gave me his notice Tuesday. So he's leaving the end of March. And our mechanic, we can't find because we've been turned down the last couple mechanics we tried to hire, and he's got a couple of heavy equipment operators open. So Steve and Larry Pinero just gave his notice. So we've got quite a bit on Steve's plate right now, but the facilities is working fine with Paul reporting to Bill Olson and me.
So I have a couple of questions. I have a couple of questions to Mike, probably simple ones. So Mike, I know brute force threats are not a thing, but that's still a thing, right? So does anyone from your department regularly reviews the incoming threats, if any, or anybody's trying to get in? Do we have enough front-end gates that will protect all the brute force intrusions?
So those servers that we have that are internet facing, so things like the permitting system and servers like that run applications that are accessible from the internet, yes, we do look at the logs periodically. A summary of the logs is mailed to the applications manager every night, and he looks at those to see if anything peculiar has been going on. We have a couple of times found some odd things that have caused us to go and dig around and maybe change the way a few things are structured just to be on the safe side. We also have again, it's really all about multi-layered. Now, yes, we monitor the boundary, but we also have this piece of software called Varonis, which allows us to monitor inside the network for things like account privileges changing or new accounts being created. And that stuff is fed back to us. So, if an account is created at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's pretty weird. And you've got to ask yourself what's going on there. Or if an account that has been inactive or been quiet for a long time suddenly acquires privileges that it didn't have before, that's pretty suspicious stuff. So we're trying as much as we can to put keep our fingers on the points where we expect to detect attacks, but you don't know what you don't know is going on.
That's the motto of the security, right? So I think that's good responses. I'm happy with those. The one question, one of the last question I have is the physical security, right? I know that the physical equipment is all locked in, but do you monitor them using cameras or some sort of a thing? So unexpected people may not be wandering around the equipment trying to insert floppy drives or USB disks.
Yes, that's probably all I really want to say about that. We do. Those locations where we are not as happy as we would like to be with the physical security, we do have other measures in place.
Okay. Thank you. So any other questions from Finance Committee? Okay. Any questions or anything from Select Board? Okay. Thank you, Mike. That's a wrap.
You're welcome.
Technology.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so we move to the next item, Health and Human Services, Board of Health. Who is from Board of Health? I need to get the new sheet.
He's being promoted.
Okay.
Jeff Stevens.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey Jeff, welcome to the Budget Reviews, Finance Committee and Select Board.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we have the information Q&A and everything. So does anybody from FinCom have anything to start? Okay. Christina?
Jeff, so this question actually probably isn't for you, but it sort of came up in your department, so I'll ask it now. It's probably more for Jody. Jody, is there any sort of policy on vehicle maintenance, like as far as what should be done to a vehicle or not, or where to take it, anything like that to kind of standardize that?
We've talked about this through the years and we have standardized some parts of it. I will say I've been without a mechanic for several years. I have one mechanic, the other one has been out for various reasons and now it doesn't work here anymore. So it is kind of hard to take every vehicle in the town up to one mechanic who's maintaining our fleet. But we do try to do that where it's, you know, where it makes sense to do that. I know you asked some questions about one of the vehicles there and where he took it. I'm certainly open to continuing to talk about that, but.
Okay, no, that sounds good. I didn't realize that the other mechanic was no longer there. I thought there were two. So yeah, that definitely changes things. But I think my thought was just that if that person, or if you get a second person, it might be nice for a mechanic that works for the town to take a look at some of the other vehicles every so often, just to make sure that they're running properly, and maybe he can, he could sort of stave off any major issues, or if he could do the work or do the work himself, whatever,
Right. I think if you go to the Capitol meetings, you'll see we try to keep everything together for as many years as we can. And that is challenging for our mechanic because we've got a lot of really old vehicles. But yeah, we do try to do that. And I think maybe Eric's out there listening. Maybe Eric, you could put that on an upcoming department head meeting and we can revisit it. And once I get a second mechanic, that could help out again. But it has been about 3 years due to injuries and other things that we've been working with one mechanic in this town. So.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Dennis and then Heather.
Jeff, how are you? I saw your report was very thorough as always, but I still have one question. I repeat it each year, and that is, what are we doing to try to track the opioid situation? I mean, we're now 4 years into something like a 2,000 person death rate for the state of Massachusetts. And every once in a while, I unfortunately pick up a newspaper and see somebody I know in an obituary. I later find out there was an overdose. So I'm just wondering how our situation is and what, if anything, we're doing to at least track the raw numbers to find out whether this problem is increasing or decreasing in the town.
Sure. So what I do the best I can with our staff at this point is we will stay in touch with emergency medical services and police, see where the overdoses are. I still stay involved with some of the other communities that are involved with, such as Lowell and the substance abuse groups there, to try to get some ideas. They'll actually give me some information that we can use to get to residents when need be. Most recently, what we're doing is there's now a new grant that's come out that is going to be a cooperative grant for 3 years, and it's going to be fairly competitive. But I'm reaching out to a couple of other communities that do not have any substance abuse prevention coordinator type positions, and we're going to look at filling out this grant to cover more than one town with a regionalized approach. I don't know what our chances of getting this grant yet are, but the RFR came out this week, and a couple of health directors and I are meeting tomorrow to talk about what our options might be to start looking at other ways to fund this position, which I think we all know we need in some capacity in town. but currently I haven't had it for about a
Basically,
year.
Dennis, we still don't have a drug coordinator. Is that correct? I mean, we don't have that position filled?
No, we do not.
Okay, all right. And I just wanted to leave you with, if I know that it sounds like you are trying to determine what the issues are. If we could get some numbers, just general numbers as to how things are going here, would be very, I think, very, very important to get you the support that you need. Okay.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay. Thank you.
Heather?
Hi, Jeff. One of the responses you gave the detail of the flu revolving account, and it seems like it's growing over time. And I'm just curious what you can use those funds for, and if you have any anticipated use of them in the near future.
So the reason why those funds grow is because as I think I put into that response, there's an administrative fee you get that's set by the federal government for every time you distribute a flu vaccine. You get that administrative rate, and also you get your reimbursement for the vaccine itself. So that fund does grow over time. And initially, it's used to make sure you've got enough capital to buy the amount of flu vaccine you need. We can spend anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 at a time just to get the vaccine we anticipate using. With the amount that's growing in that account, I would like to explore the possibility of using it for additional staff or supplementing current staff to fund them during the year, to expand that way. And the other thing we do use it for is if there's other equipment we need, such as large scale refrigeration or equipment, we have a good healthy balance that we don't have to worry about getting what we need.
So you're allowed to use that fund for an FTE?
Well, that's what I need to explore. I don't have an answer on that yet, and I would defer to Dan on that.
Go ahead, Dan.
So, like what we do with the operating budget, sometimes there are funds that we appropriate at the beginning of that language in the budget, such as like $3,000 from the Senior Center Revolving Fund. We could do a similar thing where we could appropriate some of the excess money that was generated from the administration portion of the Board of Health Revolving Fund to appropriate towards the Board of Health budget to create some new hours for the Board of Health if it's necessary.
Okay, I just, I know there's been requests for the nurse and it hasn't been funded, so I just, I wondered if that would be a possible use in the future.
Definitely exploring that.
Okay. Any other questions? Beth?
I gotta unmute. There we go. I was just wondering if you could elaborate more on like the COVID situation and the funding that you've received for COVID, and just for the community to hear too, how the COVID funding is played out, and are we anticipating? I haven't paid super close attention to what's happening in the Senate, but are we anticipating any funding for an additional COVID response coming out of, the federal government?
So at this point, throughout the past calendar year, we've been allocated around $30,000 from the state, and we've been using that money to fund not only our current public health nurse for additional hours and overtime hours for contact tracing. We also have been able to hire a part-time nurse to help out with nights, weekends, and the overflow, in addition to CARES Act money that we've been using as well. So I do not know if there'll be an additional infusion of money at this point. Right now, the COVID numbers are dropping and the focus is clearly on mitigation and getting people vaccinated. I don't think we'll know if we see a fourth wave of this virus come through. Maybe we'll see additional funding then. But currently, I think we've seen what we're going to get at this point, which has been extraordinarily helpful in managing this crisis.
Okay, thank you.
So I have one question. Is remember, like a couple of months ago, we declared Westford as a red status for COVID.
We sure did.
And are we still there, or are we reducing? How is Westford as a community for COVID infection rate?
At 5 o'clock today, we went back to green.
Cool, congratulations. Nice job. Okay. So any other, sorry, Mark?
To elaborate on those numbers a little bit, we've had approximately 1,100 cases in town over the past 13 months. And we've had 27 people pass for different reasons, whether it be COVID directly itself or underlying conditions. Most of those people were seniors or on hospice already. Currently, there are approximately 20 people that have active cases of COVID in town right now, and very few are very sick at this point. So we are hopefully turning a corner and staying there.
Good news.
Mark and then Anita.
Yeah. So Jeff, listen, I have zero questions for you on your budget. I just wanted, on behalf of probably all of us, to thank you and your staff for everything that you've been doing. It's absolutely hellacious what you have all had to be doing during all this time. I so wish that the state and the federal government would have allowed the towns to provide the vaccines for their employees, having witnessed what happens during the flu vaccine and how efficient that is, and now trying to navigate the horrific process to get a COVID vaccine, which unfortunately I qualify for. I so wish that you guys would have been able to do that, and you deserved to be able to do that. So thank you very much for all of that, and all of your staff for all the hours.
No, thank you, Mark. We're not done fighting yet, though. We're hopeful that maybe we'll get some at some point, but
vaccines, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Anita?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I feel like usually whenever I am in a meeting with you, you're in the hot seat for COVID, and now you're in the hot seat for finance. Maybe the next time we see you, it'll be like a celebration of some kind. I have a question. It's related to COVID, and I know just sort of with the disastrous rollout from the state around the COVID vaccine, there was at one point sort of regional discussions about how can communities come together and kind of, if it's sending a letter or it's doing something like that. And I just wondered if in general, there might be more opportunities for regional partnerships around anything health related with the other local health departments. I know it's hard to kind of think outside of COVID right now, but I really loved that people were coming together, even though it was in a time of crisis, but establishing those partnerships kind of going forward might be beneficial for us all. I just wanted to kind of note that. And also, I always am surprised at the breadth of services that the health department provides. And there's a lot of direct service, which I always forget about, or that arm. And I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about what the home visits are like. Or yeah, I'll just stop there.
So home visits, usually what they generally entail for the health department is usually our nurse Gail and an MRC volunteer will go out, and that's usually at flu clinic time when we have homebound people that can't get out, and we do anywhere between 20 and 30 people a year that simply can't leave their house, and they go out and they travel. They spend a day, sometimes into the second, and hit that population, whoever is looking for it and needs it. They'll do that this year as well.
Yep, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay. I have one question that probably is covered already, but regarding the nurse under personal services, you requested for 83,000. TMR is almost at 2% from last year. So what's the detail behind that?
So the detail behind that is what I'm looking to do is make our public health nurse a 37.5-hour-a-week employee. And yes, it is higher than last year because she did get a raise from last year, and now I'm basing it off of her rate for this year to get to that number.
Okay, so
I think that's what you mean.
So the background is increasing the hours of the nurse. That's what the increase in expenditure is coming from.
Right. Now, I would like to point out that we've been working on this for a couple of years, and Jody's been very helpful in trying to find a way to do that. This year, we have that covered with CARES Act money and grant money that we've received. So we're able to make Gail whole at this point. And when we get to a point where we're no longer able to do that, we'll look to see what the next options are. That fair and reasonable, Jody?
So any other questions to Jeff? Heather?
So would it make sense to put in the next town meeting that verbiage that Dan was talking about to possibly use some of that reserve or that revolving fund? Or are you not quite there yet? You're waiting to do that another year?
I think that's probably a discussion we'll have to have in the future. I don't know that we can do it right now for the next town meeting, but we could talk about it, certainly, see if that would make sense.
Dan?
So the CARES Act actually goes through December 31st of 2021. So we have two opportunities if we want to do that at the annual town meeting and at the October town meeting. So we can, we have time to explore that.
So my only statement there would be, if we are using additional funds coming from revolving fund to fund salary, I think we're looking at ongoing funds coming in for ongoing expenses going out, right? So at some point, we want to make sure that they are approximately equal, right? We don't create a whole year to year to year going forward in that. So as long as the funds from revolving money is sufficiently be able to go on the nurse's salary, that would be a financially viable move. But I don't recommend going more expenses than less income in that situation, in that particular situation. Okay, so last call for Jeff, otherwise we can let him go. Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, everybody.
Jeff.
Okay, moving on to Council of Aging, Ms. Clara. I see Paul Fox also responded some questions. Are we expecting both of them? Oh no, we're not getting a Paul Fox today. I know
No,
that.
Paul is busy right now. I refuse
occupied right now.
I refuse to text Paul until I hear from him.
And please don't text on my account.
So Jennifer is unmuted, but she's not sharing her camera. So
I'm trying.
I
see myself, but yeah. Yeah, it's not. I just say to share my webcam, but it's not doing anything.
let me.
Oh, maybe this is it. Here we go. Maybe. Yeah, it's just giving me the option to share my webcam, but when I click on it, it's not opening. So I apologize.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
Welcome, Ms. Clara, for the Finance Committee and Select Board meeting.
Thank you.
Anyone want to start with Council of Aging? John?
Yeah, I have a question that's probably more appropriate for Paul Fox. I noticed we're still having troubles with the HVAC system at the senior center. And it seems like we've had issues like this in several projects over time, and they don't seem to be lasting very long. Is there anything happening that could be fixed by either better contracts, better contractors, or more construction oversight? It just seems like we have these recurring HVAC problems, and I don't think I don't know, how long has it been since we did the senior center? Has it been, what, 10 years? 15 years? When did we do the senior center?
I think we did it in 2010.
Okay, so about 10 years. And you would think these systems will last a little bit longer. And I wonder if it could be, take a look at the process, or, you know, the contractors we use, maybe the contracts that we use, something that would probably get a better result than we've had. We've had issues in the police department for quite a while. And it just seems like it's a pattern. And I wonder if it'd be worthwhile to take a look at the process to see if we could do better than that. You know, that'd be a question I'd ask Paul Fox, and I bet he could probably solve it.
I think Eric can solve that.
Okay.
Eric and then Mark.
So just to answer John's statement, so the system that we have over at the senior center, it's a Sanyo variable refrigerant system, which the company's gone out of business. We were initially thinking that we would design a new system to replace what's there, but the preliminary design figures showed a replacement cost of several $100,000. So Paul is working to revisit to see if it makes more sense for the town to invest less money into maintaining what's there and stretching the useful life of the equipment. So that's what he's doing at this point, rather than coming to seek a capital expenditure of several $100,000 for that building.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, no, and I didn't have that level of detail, but I did want to let you know that in capital committee meetings, Paul has addressed this with the capital committee. There are definite areas of process improvement as we continue to build buildings and make changes. So he's also identified it, and he and Eric have talked to us in the capital committee about it.
I'll make one statement about this, if I may. So the building is 10 years old, and none of this equipment will go out of business or out of support in 10 years. So what I like to recommend is, in any of the future capital projects, we also look for the equipment they will install that will have a good usable life in terms of company or models. We just don't want to go for like a 20-year-old model while building it. We probably will be good looking for a current generation or the previous generation model for any of these things. Go ahead, Eric.
I'll just say, I used to be a facilities director, and oftentimes we end up installing systems into our municipal buildings that are designed by engineers that are usually cutting edge technology. You sometimes find out that that technology is not all it's cracked up to be, and the useful life sometimes is much less than you hope for. So in this case, I don't think we knew Sanyo was going to go out of business. And the hard thing with the system that we have there, it's actually built into a section of the building under the roof. So we'd actually have to either abandon the system in place and install a new system elsewhere within the building or outside the building, or try to open up the roof cavity and take the old system out and put the new one in. So it's a pretty complicated project.
Okay. So looks like we all have spent enough time on figuring that out. John?
Well, I just want to add one more thing. When we talked about this at the capital planning committee a long time ago, about commonality of equipment and commonality of just the things that we do. And it seems like we get different systems at different facilities. And the same thing with the school system. When you replace boilers and things like that, it makes sense that there's any way we could do within the procurement system to get some commonality in maintenance and some commonality in equipment that would allow us a more efficient maintenance, more efficient, to be able to take care of our facilities a little bit better. So have we been thinking about that? I guess not.
I would add, it doesn't seem like we've hit on a good one yet, so I'm not sure I'd want to try to buy more of what we've gotten, but we can look at that with Paul in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions that are not AC related? Anita?
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, I was wondering if you could elaborate or talk a little bit more about the non-English speaking residents that you wanted to increase outreach to and communication. I know that's something that other towns have looked into, and this was something I tried to explore a long time ago, and it just fell off my radar. But I think other towns have tried to do like translation services, and that's something that would go, I feel like, that would be applicable across the board, across multiple departments, not specific to the senior center. But I just wanted to see if you could talk a little bit more about what you're seeing.
Yes, so, one of the things that we really strive for is that we want everyone to feel that we can accommodate everyone's needs, whether it's a language barrier or whether it's physical limitations, or even mobility issues. So one of the things that we realize, especially with our Mandarin speaking population, we have a difficult time, communicating with those individuals, especially if they're coming in for social service assistance. So we see that there's more that we can be doing. So that is just an area that, we really want to try to improve on, as well as look at offering, seeing how we can also make our newsletter, more kind of language friendly, because we do, again, have a nice size Mandarin speaking older adult population that we are seeing participate in the senior center, as well as in different social service programs. So, the more that we can make things more culturally friendly, the more diverse the center will be, and it will be more reflective of the community.
Yeah, I'd love to bring this topic to the DEI committee. I know that there's members of the Council on Aging on DEI to talk a little bit about that. And even from the Cultural Council, I know that they're grantees who are like Chinese Family Networks and stuff that maybe we can tap into and just learn a little bit more about potential resources that are within our town that could help that.
I appreciate that question.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Council on Aging? Okay, having seen that. Thank you, Ms. Clara.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, moving on to the next item, debt service.
Yeah. We have Christine Collins here too, so just waiting for her to get promoted.
Yeah, I'm trying. Hang on. Oh, there we go. You should be coming up any minute.
There you go.
Hello.
Hey, welcome, Kristen Claren.
Hi, Christine.
How are you?
You're still in the office?
Fine.
I came back to the office. A little more reliable internet in my office than in my home. So.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay. Who wants to start first?
I'll start it.
Hey, John.
Go ahead, Heather.
Heather and John.
I was looking at the year-to-date stuff that Dan sent out, and I was curious. It looked like a lot of things hadn't been paid at all yet this year. So are payments not done monthly?
No.
Or they'd be paid 50% or something like that?
Yeah. So for debt service, you have 2 interest payments a year and 1 principal payment a year. And so there's only 2 payments all year for each loan. And, so we only pay one principal. So it's often a large amount of money hanging around waiting to pay that principal payment.
Okay. And then I had another question. With the adjustment we made at one of the town meetings,
Mm-hmm.
would some of that extrapolate into future years, or why would it only be the 1 year?
Well, part of it was anticipated money for projects that, because of COVID-19 and the budgetary constraints, we deferred some of those projects. So we thought that we would have debt service coming due in 2021, but because we deferred those projects, the debt service will not even begin to be incurred until 2022. So that was short-term interest we had budgeted in case we bonded or took out some bands before in 21.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
John?
I asked the question about the debt service and particularly the excluded debt. We've got a peak that's coming due here, and we're going to be the numbers are going to go up significantly. My question is there some way to either stagger this or push it out a little bit more to get that point off of there to kind of level the curve and give us a little bit more headroom for the rest of the budget? Because, Jody's been scrambling around trying to find money to do what she has to do. And of course, the coronavirus has got us in an uproar. But it could help if we could move some of those projects or some of that excluded debt forward, because it seems like that peak that happens around 2022, 23 is really due to the excluded debt.
Yeah.
And
so
I wonder if there's some way to adjust that or move it out.
So the excluded debt that we have already approved and bonded is actually quite level. In 2023, we are estimating, I believe it's the new building for where the old fire station was.
Yeah,
and then in
the relocation, yes.
Yeah, and then in 2024, we are estimating that we will begin spending money for bond service on the new library expansion. And I think there was one other project, but the library is the lion's share of it. So, can we ladder those things in? We did a really good job laddering in the fire station to keep the tax rate from spiking. There's a lot of flexibility when we go to bond. So yes, we could. We have to show it as an expense coming up when we are estimating for future years in the budget, so it stays on everyone's radar. And if you do ladder something in, you have to understand eventually you do have to pay the full boat. So we have a very level excluded debt picture right now. If we decide to do new projects, we can do some laddering in, but it likely is going to increase the overall excluded debt. And I would like to just mention that even at the rate we're at now, it's the lowest or among the lowest amount of excluded debt that we've had in the 15 years or so. When the schools were built, there was a much larger amount of excluded debt on everyone's tax bill than there is now. But the overall taxes were probably considerably lower then.
Yeah, I was looking at the chart, and one of those is the school administration building. It's about $2.1 million in what is it, FY24 that we would be adding. And well, not adding totally. I think the new center building starts before then. So I think as we look at the total facility requirements, I think there's some issues about when we do the center building. How do we take care of what's in Millennium, where we put the school building and all that? And I just thought that if there was some way to either move some of that out. There's a point, if you look at that graph that we've been using, it seemed to me the excluded debt was the driver of that spike. And I was just hoping there would be some way we could smooth it out and give the town manager give Jody some time or give him some leeway to smooth some things out in the town budget.
Well, excluded debt, remember, does not have anything to do with Jody's budget. excluded debt is raised in the tax rate, and it is on top of the regular budget. So any debt service that we have on a bond that's excluded, it doesn't interfere with our ability to cover any other budgeted line items, because it's the town gets to vote. Yes, I want you to increase this project is so important to me that I want you to increase my taxes to pay for it. That's what the excluded debt is really saying. So
it's not a done deal.
No, it is not.
Okay.
Levi and then Dennis.
Okay. Hi, Christine. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So I think in the report you mentioned, there's a notion within the general debt limit and also another one outside the general debt limit. What is the limit? What determines that limit?
So the debt limit is a term that's used by the Department of Revenue, and we are nowhere near our debt limit. It has to do with it's a percentage of the total valuation of the town, and I don't remember what that percentage is, but we are nowhere near our debt limit in Westford. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm assuming we have to stay within that limit since we are well within, so we don't have any issue.
Correct.
Okay. And also, I saw we have some kind of a budget model. We anticipate, the non-exempt debt to be somewhere between 1 to 1.5 million, right? And going forward for the next 2 years, it looks like it's projected to be, 1.6 million, a little bit higher. So is that because, the exempt debt actually, is lower,
It's really just that we've put a few more projects in over the last few years to borrow. So when we go through the capital process, we determine the prioritization of the projects, and then we look at available funding. And some of the larger projects, because available funding was a little bit tighter in the last couple of years, have been moved to borrowing to kind of spread the cost out for a few years. That 1.5 million is really, I would rather see almost a percentage in there, because if you think about the way the budget grows, and we're using a flat number of 1.5, and we've been using it for quite a few years, it's going to eventually age out. So anyway, it's a good guide. And the reason that we want to make sure we're always investing in capital is we don't want to have to go and exclude every single project that comes up, because some things are just never going to pass in an exclusion, but still need to be done. So.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Another way to say that 1/2, that's just a soft target. It's just a guidance.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Dennis?
I'd like to ask sort of a little strategic planning question. And I think this would be open to Christine. It could be open to the Board of Selectmen and possibly Jody. In Jody's report, when she was discussed, when she issued on February 9th, she talked under the capital investment. She made she reported that we're going to continue funding capital projects with free cash as much as possible, and rely on the capital stabilization fund to back it up. And then also, when it came to non-excluded debt, she said the debt service is now 1.5 million, which exceeds the minimum borrowing policy of $550,000. I'm concerned. There's a lot of things looming on the horizon in Massachusetts. Some of it's the population. There's evidence the population's moving out. I don't know if that affects Westford. There's a big unemployment bill coming to all businesses, and I think the town's going to have to pay some of that as well. Maybe I'm wrong. And also, there's some issues with businesses thinking like 25% of the businesses in Massachusetts are thinking of moving elsewhere. The state's already chasing them up into New Hampshire as well for taxes. What I'm concerned about is the pressure on our free cash. And we made that discussion at the last fall town meeting. And I'm not sure that even though, thank goodness, COVID looks like it's beginning to hopefully abate, that from a point of view of revenue and spending that we're really out of the woods yet. And I was just wondering if some of the folks that I just mentioned could opine on what their concerns are, how they read these, and what their strategy is, so that we don't get so tight on some of the capital spending that if we have to loosen up free cash, we have none. So that's my question.
I think that's probably a better discussion with, overall budget policy and the Board of Selectmen. I mean, we are going to suffer some impact from COVID. I think it would be naive to think that we will not. We will. But Westford's unemployment history is better than the overall in Massachusetts. Westford's overall income is better than the average in Massachusetts. We're getting piles of municipal lien certificates in every day. Houses are selling for more than they're assessed for. I am not seeing much in the way of COVID impact. Earlier in the meeting, there was a question asked about the collection rate for the real estate taxes.
Yeah, no, I asked that question. Yep.
Yeah, it came in a little bit slower, but we're at 98.7% collected for 2020 as we sit here tonight. So, I mean, I think we will see some kind of impact, and it may look like a slowdown, but I think it will recover probably quicker than some communities that have a different population makeup. I think that, we're really, so far, everything is looking, stable. Free cash is going to be impacted when times like this come. Revenues are impacted, then free cash gets impacted. I've been through, I've been doing this for a long, long time, and these ebbs and flows happen. And we've done everything that we can to budget appropriately, to cut expenses, to put in a hiring freeze. So I understand what you're saying, and I absolutely agree with you that we have to be aware of what's happening and respond appropriately, so we don't have the rug pulled out from under us. But I do think we're doing those things. We're taking those measures, what we need to do.
Good, thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, so Dennis, I would just add a couple of additional points. First of all, I think Heather had raised the question earlier about the health insurance reserve fund. These reserve funds that this town has been fortunate enough to build, whether it be capital, whether it be health, these are all critical to be able to deal with fluctuations like you're referencing.
Yeah.
I do not think, and Jody and Dan and Christine can probably speak more to it, that most towns have the kinds of reserve funds and are as prudent about it as what I think we have, what we have been. So I think those are critical, and we do not want to use them unless it is absolutely necessary, because that's what they're there for. And if we do use them, we want to rebuild them. So that's point number one. Point number two is, and this, the importance and the criticality of having a robust capital planning process is huge. We know that over a 5-year period, we have consistently had $50 million worth of capital requests. We don't fund anything but a small portion of that, because of this concern of making sure that we do not overspend, whether it be non-excluded, excluded, or free cash. So that process in and of itself, along with the robust budget process and these reserve funds, are critically important. And it's because of the finance committee and the select board and our town employees that kind of push back against one another at all times, kind of vying for how we make that all work, and that has to continue. And as long as that continues, all of those things continue. I don't think that this town could not withstand anything kind of thrown at it, if you will. Doesn't mean it won't be suffering here and there every once in a while, but I think we're all better for it.
Okay.
Yep.
Tom, you have some? Did you raise your hand before? Okay. So I have a question. So obviously we have a AAA rating, right? So, but there are some things, that knobs and things that they will check to make sure that to assess our AAA rating every year. One of them is free cash flow, right? So as I see the numbers last time, it is not where we like to be, or the percentage level is not what people want to see in a AAA rated town. My question is, is that impact, or they would say, okay, COVID related times, so we're gonna waive that as a binding thing for AAA rating? Can you just tell me a little bit about the current town financial situation and how we think we can still maintain AAA rating?
Well, I mean, when they rate a town, they're looking at many different factors, and the free cash position is one piece. It's hard to say because we're also part of a larger whole, being part of Massachusetts, and that even the state of Massachusetts becomes part of our rating. Okay. Information, it does. So, you know, it's very hard to say if we will maintain a AAA rating or if that will, you know, if that will suffer because of COVID. I couldn't say that. They would have to come and do and I'm sure the next time that we issue debt, they will do a rating. They'll do a rating review with us, and I hope that we maintain our AAA. You know, we're still funding our OPEB account. We still have good reserves. We haven't rated everything. We all the measures that we take, the hiring freeze, the, you know, spending freezes, reducing budgets, making appropriate adjustments as we go, rather than just letting it all fall and then decide at the end. You know, we do so much work to try to mitigate losses at the end. They take all of that into consideration, and the strength of the management team is always mentioned in their review with us. So, you know, I feel optimistic about the AAA rating, but it is very hard to estimate what they're going to do. Yeah.
So one follow-up question is a AAA rating assessed periodically or whenever you want to issue a debt?
Every time we issue debt. Okay. They review us, yes. But, you know, with the rates at the way that they are so very low right now. You know, the difference between a AAA and a double isn't really that much anymore. It used to mean a lot, but you know, it doesn't mean as much as it used to as far as rates go. It still means a lot for pride's sake and for, you know, to let us know that we're doing a good job. But for the sake of interest rates, it's not as pressing as it used to be.
Very good.
Thank you. Any other questions from anybody? Finance Committee, Select Board? Okay. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Christine.
Bye. You're welcome. See you later.
Okay. So we move to risk management section. 940, otherwise classified, otherwise unclassified.
That's you, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my calculations for the direct and indirect costs for the for all the enterprise funds. Basically, it's, you know, a small portion of, you know, administration salaries such as Jody, myself, payroll and whatnot. You know, charges for things like general insurance, workers' comp, and then direct charges like health insurance, retirement, life insurance, all those other things. So all those calculations are actually in the budget under each enterprise. So, you know, you can look at the detail of them all, and it's just basically a standard calculation that we do each year. The one thing that we do in Westford so that we know that we're being accurate is we go back to the latest fiscal year that was recently completed. In this case, it's FY20, and we check the numbers to make sure that we charge them the appropriate amount. If we undercharge them, we want to charge them an additional fee in FY22 to make up for that amount that we covered. If we overcharge them, we'll give them a credit for FY22. So this is sort of a solid process we've had for about 10, 11 years at this point. It's working well for us.
All right.
Dennis?
Dan, I just have a question related to the last one I gave, and that was the unemployment insurance. I know that you have to pay into that. Are you paying the same rates that a private business will, or you have a special rate because of a local government? And are you aware of the fact that this thing is going to increase? I just want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so we did discuss this during the our budget review, and in FY21 we budgeted 80,000, and FY22 we bumped it up to 125,000. We have not seen an increase yet, but but our unemployment rate is based on both the claims by the state as a whole and as part of Westford. So if the state has an increase in claims, we can also see an increase in claims just by being in the state. It's sort of what Christine said. So unfortunately, there's no calculation for us to see at this point that we can go in and check and see how we're doing. It's more they just charge us at the end of every quarter and say, this is what you owe for unemployment.
Yeah, it's a $4 billion liability, and they're trying to close. So just keep it in mind.
Oh, thank you.
Levi?
Yeah, hi, Dan. I have one question for you, maybe one of your favorite subject, OPEB, right? There are big amount OPEB liability, and is there any deadline? How soon we have to fund enough OPEB?
No, for the OPEB liability, there is no timetable. For those watching from home, it's the OPEBs are other post-employment benefits. It's basically health insurance for our retirees. No, there is no set amount like there is for the retirement assessment or set timetable. What I can say though is that Christy and I just met with our bank that manages our OPEB funds, and we're doing fantastic as a community compared to other places in Massachusetts. So we're in the top 25%, and that is one of those things that bond rating agencies look well upon as part of our rating, that we are addressing that liability. So we've set aside almost $10 million of our $72 million or $75 million liability, I should say.
And when you say top 25%, how do they evaluate that? Is that just a ratio compared with how much funded versus the liability?
Yeah, it's basically like they can see their unfunded liability and any amount that they funded. A lot of these banks have a lot of clients, and our auditors audit many communities, so they're always comparing communities, how they're doing with regard to OPEB funding. And so the last time we met with our auditors, they said we're doing great compared to other communities, and we're in the top 25%.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Any questions from anybody else? Okay. So does it also cover 945 and 910 employee benefits? Are those you as well done, Dan?
Yeah, not that.
Yeah, if there's any other.
Yeah.
Employee benefits and general liability insurance, and transfers to and from other trusts. Okay, Dennis?
Yeah, there was a reported loss in the investments. And I was going to ask you, for one thing, who was it? What company actually manages our investments, or who does it? And what actual investments do we hold? And how frequently are they reviewed for performance?
So Christine is the treasurer. She's in charge of the investments. We're diversified. We have several banks that manage our money. We do meet with them at least annually. We're scheduling one with our Bartholomew holdings, which is a lot of our trust, our CPA money, and things like that. So we can see how we're performing. I mean, we're very well diversified and to manage risk with our investments. Then we have other, like Rockland Trust I just mentioned, they're handling our OPEB trust. And, that's a long-term fund that, we have, a lot more opportunity for different investments, since that it's a long-term liability we're trying to fund. So in that case, we're trying to hit a higher rate of return on the OPEB money that we have there. So we're allowed to invest in like the 21 stocks in the market. We diversify. We just had a great meeting with Rockland Trust, and we did fairly well on our December returns for our earnings there.
And so there's not a brokerage house that we use. We go through banks primarily.
Yeah,
Is that
for the most part.
do they get paid by fee or percentage?
Yeah, Christine had wrote back in one of her responses that you know, they manage the fees, so they're paid by usually a percentage, like a 0.2 or 0.3%.
Okay. Okay. Good. And I think I got one last question for you, Dan. I'm going to leave you alone. This question was, he's been sitting there very, very quiet tonight, but Scott Hazelton asked this question at the last meeting. I think it's a critical question. And that is, what are we factoring in potential increase in gas prices? I think that's going to be a critical thing to discuss.
You know, that's a great question. As soon as we had the budget solidified, which we budgeted at $2.30 a gallon, prices started to go up. So it's something we're going to have to keep our eye on as we move forward. And, you know, if we need supplemental funding because rates go up higher, we can address that at the time. Or, yeah, it is a concern. I agree that we need to address it at some point if rates continue to go up.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. John, do you have a question? Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. So are we done with, did we do 945 employee benefits and general liability insurance? Okay. Transfers to and from other trusts.
All right, that's just the OPEB money.
Okay. So that concludes the budget review agenda items for tonight. So the remaining one is approval of minutes of FinCom only.
So Harry, before you go on, as much as we love being with you, I think I suspect that the select board is at this point ready to adjourn. So if there's a motion from the select board to adjourn.
So moved.
And is there a second? Okay, and everybody just, again, show of hands. Okay. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next week.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
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 Even our meeting is pretty close to conclusion. The only thing left is the meeting minutes, which were emailed earlier this week and also in the packet. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, you want a motion to approve?
Please do.
All right, so moved. I moved that we approve the budget. I mean, we approve the minutes for December 10th.
I'll second that.
Okay, John. Okay, let's roll call. Hari, aye. Christina?
Aye.
Dennis?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Heather?
Okay, Heather.
Aye.
Okay, she's
Her screen is frozen. She's not sleeping.
You hear me?
Yes.
Your screen is frozen.
Oh, but can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, but your screen is frozen in a manner that you are actually sleeping.
Oh no, I'm not sleeping. I'm wide awake.
We believe you.
You should put your cat face on.
I should. Here,
Jeff?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Levi?
Aye.
Okay. So the meeting minutes are approved and the future meetings are posted March 11th, 25th, April 1st, and April 8th. Any questions on that? Okay, that concludes Finance Committee meeting on March 4th at 8:59. Thank you all for joining.
Move to adjourn.
I think it was a good meeting. Thank you.
Hang on. I think Dennis had made a point. I did not make a motion to adjourn. Can somebody make a motion to adjourn?
I did. So I
Okay,
did.
Dennis. Okay. So somebody want to second that?
Second.
Okay. Motion to move to adjourn. Hari? Yes. Christina?
Aye.
Dennis?
Aye.
Heather?
I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can.
Yes, we got you this time. Jeff?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
Levi?
Aye.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Good meeting.
See you later.